Okay, so in yesterday's video I was talking to you about this John Deere. I've looked it up online. First of all, it's a STX38. It's a 12.5 horsepower Kohler engine, and circa 89 to 93, so it was built within that range. Then they stopped production, and I think again, maybe in 97 to, I don't know, maybe 2000, they reproduced these again. Now the 89 came with more options than the 97, but the way you identify whether it's a 97 or an 89 is the deck color, and the deck color is yellow. On the 97 it was black. Yesterday I told you we were going to take this engine off and we're going to put it in that lawnmower over there. Well, first thing I did was I raised this up and I looked up underneath there and I saw a PTO. A PTO means that it has an electric start for the lower deck, and right here is the switch, which I didn't see yesterday. I thought it was headlights, but I didn't really look at it. I'm a little bit concerned of trying to switch this engine over to that one over there. And then I really got to digging into that one over there. And on the surface, it looks pretty good. New tires, the paint looks pretty good. The seat isn't terrible shape. But when you really get digging into it, it needs new belts and needs a bunch of stuff. And I'm not entirely sure I can switch this engine with a PTO on it over to that one. I might be able to. That being said, Carolyn and I decided, hey, let's take a closer look at this one. Let's see what's really going on with it, and is it savable? Because a John Deere is going to pull in a better price, even if it's an 89, probably especially because it's an 89, than that one over there. That one over there is an off-brand name, isn't going to have much recognition, well, probably no recognition. So, you know, we might get 200 bucks out of it. Well, I spent 40 on that one and 80 on this one, so I mean the profit margins are going to be pretty small. But with this one, you know, I might next spring be able to put $500–600 on this, and it might go for that much, with it being a John Deere and a Kohler engine. So I started taking a look at it, and of course it needs paint, a lot of paint. So I started working on that. Now I used to have a father-in-law, my first wife, high school sweetheart. When I came home from the Navy, he had arthritis in his fingers. He was in his 50s, and he blamed, he was an auto body guy, I should have mentioned that. He's an auto body guy, owned his own little shop, and he blamed his arthritis on having to sand all the time. I suspect it was probably a combination of sanding and as much alcohol as he drank. I mean, what time is it? Well, let's see, it's 6:30 in the morning, crack of dawn, beer time! He would have me come over and sand the cars that needed painted. He called it, what it's actually called is roughing up the paint. So in this case, the paint's flaking off. So you want to get all that flaking off, but the paint that is solid, you want to rough up. Now, what he called it was, GD it, Rob! You need to rough that up a little better. Or scuff it up. I think maybe it was scuff it up. Scuff it up better. It was always GD it, Rob. Because he'd come over and he'd look at it, and I'm like sanding away with, you know, like 500 grit, 600 grit sandpaper and wet sanding. Scotch brake pads was another thing that he used. And he'd come over and he'd see a spot, and he said, you missed a spot. And I'm like, that thing is roughed, I can see it. So, but what I'm going to do is, I mean, everything is flaking. Not everything. A lot of it is flaking. Like right here is probably flaking. So this morning I started taking my brass brushes and put it on my drill. Now I thought about buying some tools and doing it properly, and I thought, no, I don't want to spend any more money on this than I have to. So I ran it until the battery died on my drill. I did this too much. I shouldn't have done it that much. What I should have done is scuffed it up. GD it, Rob, scuff it up better. I should have just scuffed it up, but I took it off. And then this rusted area, I'm scuffing up, trying to clean it up with the brush. I might run some sandpaper over it or Scotch Brite, and then I'll prime it. So I'll do that to the biggest portion of the machine. This looks good, So I'm going to leave that alone. I'm not going to touch that at all. And then the hood's plastic, so I don't have to touch that either. I just need to clean it up and shine it up somehow. So that will be the biggest portion of the project. But you figure the paint, $6 a can for the green, probably $6 for the yellow too. Now, as far as the deck is concerned, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on the deck. I'll just paint it yellow just to kind of pretty it up, because that's going to get scratched up anyways as soon as you start mowing. You know, you look around some more, and the wiring is an absolute nightmare. And I spent probably 4 hours last night just trying to figure out the wiring. I mean, they've tore it all apart, and it's a mess. They got the voltage regulator over here completely disconnected, and the wires are just hanging. So that's not working. This device here, they had hanging off to the side, and I plugged it back in, and when you hit the key, it clicks. I can't get it off now with one hand. It would click. Well, this wire came out, I think it was that one, no, it was this wire, came out and hit the starter, just fell over and hit the starter, and it blew a breaker. Now, most lawnmowers have a fuse. This one has a breaker. Well, Carolyn actually got online looking to see if she could find something, and she found the breaker. So I reset the breaker. Not entirely sure how I did it. I just took it apart and it started working again. But whatever happened, this stopped working when I put the wire back in. It just didn't work anymore. So I'm thinking the wiring is going to be an issue. I could buy a new wiring harness, and you know, that's going to be a couple $100, I'm sure, and wire it up. Or I can take a shortcut. So I decided to take a shortcut, and I like it this way. It's my preference. But you may remember over the summer I worked on a lawnmower and I put one of these switches in. Well, the package from Amazon came with 2 switches, so I had this one free. I think I'm gonna put the switch in. I'm gonna bypass the starting solenoid, run it right to the starter. I simulated that yesterday. I took a jumper cable, I put it on the positive of the battery, I hit the positive side of the starting solenoid, and the engine started. That being said, it was a challenge to get it started, because and the guy who sold it to me told me this. The carburetor is broke. It doesn't work correctly. As soon as you turn the gas on, within seconds, the carburetor air housing, the air filter housing, fills up with gas. It just floods it. So this shutoff isn't working, the solenoid, and the float isn't working in there. So I bought one of those. That was $20. This pulley on this spindle here is pretty bad shape. I'm gonna, well, if I can find the blade. That's the blade going up and down, not round and round, up and down. So I'm gonna buy a rebuild kit to fix that. But I did start the mower deck before, and it worked pretty good. Now, I don't know how well you're gonna be able to see this in the camera, but that tire is towed out significantly. I've showed you how to fix that before in a previous video. So the tires are wore down, so that tells you you have a tow out problem. So they're easy to bend. You run into a stump and it's going to bend. Now you have to try to figure out which one's bent, and technically they're both bent. And what you got to do is you got to go over the steering wheel, and you got to try to straighten your steering wheel up, and then look at your wheels. Well, that means this one is bent too. So I need to straighten that one up as well, but that one needs to come towards me. I'm not going to deal with that. But if I were to turn the wheel to straighten this one, so now that wheel's straight and that wheel's crooked. So if I straighten that wheel, look how far off your steering wheel is now. So what I'll do is I'll straighten that wheel. What you got to do is just basically bend it. Now, last time I tried to bend it with my brute strength, and it was a lot of work. So I'll heat that up a little bit this time and make it easier to bend. The gear linkage, that was another thing that we had an issue with. It doesn't go in reverse. And so what I've noticed, and you probably aren't going to be able to see it, but right here is a little cutout that the gear shifter should be. So on the other side of the mower, this is the linkage right here. And so it would seem to me it needs to go a little bit further. So what I'm going to do is disconnect this linkage here and push this bar to see if that puts it in reverse. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to get started on putting that push button on. Now we're going to take the gas tank off so I can get into the dash. Having worked on both old machines and new machines, I'm going to be honest, I really feel like the older machines are just harder to work on. It's like they didn't really think about the assembly process when they built them back in the, the old days. Yeah. Nowadays, a gas tank has 2 bolts. Pops right up. This one's got, what, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 screws and 2 bolts. There are 4 bolts. Okay, I think I'm going to put it right here. So what I'm going to do is the battery cable comes up to the solenoid here, this bolt right here. And then when you turn the key, it's supposed to send an electrical signal to this thing right here, which opens the switch, and then this sends an electric current to the starter. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take it off, oh boy, that was loose, of this. I'm going to take the battery cable off this, and I'm going to put it over here, because I don't need this switch anymore. This will switch right here, because I'm putting a new switch in its place. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I have an extra wire here. So I'm going to hook this wire up, and then this wire is going to run back to the switch I have. And this wire will connect to the other side of the switch, but I'm going to have to make it longer. It's not long enough. Okay, I got to make the hole a little bigger in my attachment wire. I could replace it, but why spend money if I don't need to? Now, I may end up replacing it anyways, because this is not an easy chore to do. I've turned my drill down so it wouldn't dig too bad. Now let's see if it fits. Yeah, that fits. Okay, so I'm going to give the trolls something to scream about. They'll enjoy this. So this is supposed to be a red wire, but I don't have a red wire, and this is going to work fine for my switch. It's completely hidden, so there, once you get it up there, you'll see that it's just red. I could tape it with a red tape just to kind of indicate it's red, but I think anybody would be able to figure out this is supposed to be red, and that I was taking a shortcut. So I'm going to tape that up so it doesn't ground out anywhere. Okay, so I need to replace that with one that size. GoPro, stop recording. Okay, so now I'm going to put the switch through the hole we cut out. So I'm going to hook the battery back up. Now I'm not going to start the engine because that carburetor leaks too bad, and I don't want to risk gasoline getting down into the engine sump. Now I know it runs because I ran it yesterday, so all I need to know is the starter going to turn it over? So the key will still shut it off. It will create a ground to the ignition coil, so you have to turn the key on in order for it to start. Now you don't have to turn the key on to turn it over, just to start. Okay, so I don't see any sparks happening anywhere, so that's kind of a positive sign. So we should be able to just hit the button, and that's all there was to it. So if you'll click this up next box, it'll take you to that video I made yesterday about this thing. So hope I can inspire you to think creatively when you're living your dreams. Thanks for watching.